Project Tribute Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to aiding our nation's first responders. Our vision and mission is to enhance the life-saving capabilities of our first responders through raising awareness and funding for the life-saving work that they do. Our goal with the podcast is to be an educational avenue and a method for our heroes to express themselves. In the podcast, we will discuss various tough subjects. Some of the subjects may be uncomfortable or controversial. Our guests have the right to share their thoughts and ideas, and for our listeners to hear the unedited words of our guest. The Foundation's role is to showcase a diverse array of thoughts and opinions within the first responder community. If you hear something that you do not agree with, please consider reaching out to us at projecttributefoundation@gmail.com and join our podcast. If you're a first responder and you would like to share your story, we truly would love to hear from you and learn from your experiences. Please enjoy this week's show, and as always, like, comment, and share to help us grow. You can find more information at www.projecttribute.com. Thanks, and have a great one. Alrighty, guys. So, John Beckloff, another week for the Project Tribute Foundation. So, we had a really big week. We had several events. We had a 5K, 10K, and 15K over in Pawnee, Oklahoma at the Burial Mounds Shooting Center. They wonderful folks. They invited us over there just to really help spread the word about the foundation and the work that we're doing. We were able to donate, I think it was around 15 to 20 of our first aid kits to the range safety officers. And that way, should something happen, the course had people all throughout the course that had tourniquets and bleed kits, and just to make sure that all the participants were safe. But in addition, they gave us the opportunity to share about the foundation and the work that we're doing. That was really exciting. It was exciting just to be in front of another group of folks. And this one was more folks that have served in the military, are serving in the military, police, some form of, first responder capacity, or those that are just trying to just, enjoy shooting and doing the 5K or the all the way up to the 15K. Phenomenal folks. If you're near Pawnee, Oklahoma, check them out on Facebook, the Burial Mounds Shooting Center out of Pawnee. It was easy to find. The one thing that I learned is that if you go on their Facebook page, they've got their address, and it's basically an intersection. And if you go there, that'll get you to the right address versus if you Google. But that the family that runs that, they were just incredible people. Everybody that was there was treated as if they were family. They had barbecue, they had all the facilities ready to go. And kudos to all those that ran in the event. I couldn't do it. I'm excited. I'd like to try it out sometime, but that was impressive. They would run through obstacles and all those, get to a shooting stage, follow the directions of whoever was running that shooting stage, and then they would move on. And it was incredible, just the age ranges and the overall. It was every person within society that was there just enjoying the sport, and I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed the group that was there. We had one of our first responder advisory board members, Brett Mickelon. He joined me, and it was fun to see Brett. That was one of the first times that he'd been able to come join, and just seeing Brett be around folks that were some people from his past, and it was fun to interact. We also met some wonderful folks that they run The Way They Hunt. And I don't know, the camera's using a little webcam, so I don't know if that'll pick it up, but they're working on ways that they can try to help us. Did learn that I don't follow directions very well. They were taking some film, and I didn't realize that. And then it was, hey, let's get some B-reel. And so then, I just don't follow directions very well. So tonight it was kind of a tough choice. It's been a tough week. We've had lots of events. Yesterday we had an event at a local brewery called Cooper and Mill. And if you're near Bartlesville, it is a phenomenal brewery. We have a couple in town now. But what they're doing is they're hosting a bingo night every Wednesday. And then the first Wednesday of the month is a featured nonprofit. They allowed the Project Tribute Foundation to come down, and it would be really our second local event since we started. And it was great. All the people were there. That we had a wonderful turnout. So if you were one of the folks that was there, thank you for one showing up for a local business, but showing up for us and for our first responders. We raised between both weekends. Or I think it would have been about $2,500. So that was fun. You know, it was fantastic. It was nice to be able just to have the whole store out, and it was the first time that I've brought all the products out since we've had the new shirts and all that. The other thing that was exciting to me at Cooper Mill is that was the largest turnout that we've had of our board members and our advisory board, and that it was just neat. It was neat to from an idea basically a year ago to yesterday, where we had, I mean, it was a dozen people that are connected to the foundation, just there to help and to help fundraise and to drive the cause of our mission, and our missions to aid the life-saving capabilities. That was incredible. And if you were one of the ones that came to help, thank you. We had, Brett and his wife, Jared and Laura were there, Emily was there, Allison was there, Sierra was there. I'm trying to think who else. Um, there was somebody else I'm missing, but it was just nice. It was nice to have such a great outpouring from our board members as well as the community, and we were able to fundraise. The One of the things that we've learned over the last two events is that folks are asking to buy a first aid kit, and that's where we started. That's what we're giving out to the first responders, and it's been a struggle. The first company we were using, they ran out of business, or I think they're in business, but they're not allowed to sell the items that we were purchasing. So now we're in search of another, provider that we can make a bleed kit. We're probably going to end up having to build our own, and that's a challenge in itself. That we're going to have to figure out who can we get the best price for tourniquets and for the bleed kits or the chest wound seals or just the bags. The market right now is incredible. I found a couple examples of what we were buying for just under $30, and the closest comparable one was $300. And so that's led us to have to go, man, we need to make our own. That way we can cut the cost and try to make sure that we're maximizing the dollars that we earn. So that's the current challenge, is getting grants up and running and writing grants, but also to have something to write grants for. Right now, we're in our podcast room. I say I am in our podcast room, and it's I've got the microphone is connected to a chair. So we're still trying to get the right gear to do the podcasting, as to the higher level. And that was one of the challenges tonight. We didn't have anything kind of scheduled, and all of the board members have been incredibly active this week. So it was tough to, hey, do you have some more time that I can take out of you? That way we can, get a podcast. And so initially I was just going to do a rerun, and we made a commitment. We made a commitment that every Friday we're going to put a podcast out. So it was one of those where I can't say that we're accountable if I'm just going to wing it and say, hey, we'll just do a rerun. So initially I sent Jared a text that we're going to do a rerun. And then I sat, and I was like, this isn't the culture that we're trying to create. So I'm here. It is nighttime. I'm, filming in a room, which if it sucks, but we made a commitment. And I think that Jared in our last podcast mentioned going through basically books and discussing or using the books as kind of a topic. And one of the ones that he sent to me in a picture was the seven habits of highly effective people by Stephen Covey. And I have this book on my shelf. It's got lots of lessons. And as I was thumbing through trying to figure out the one that I wanted to talk about, it's kind of come up a lot about, especially nowadays, having to really listen to people, and not just with your ears, but the whole situation, and see the whole situation. And I screwed up even today on that. I didn't understand somebody was having a struggle with something that didn't make sense to me. And so finally it was, look, we have to do this. And by the time we got done, they agreed, but they were in just tears. And that wasn't, I hate that. I hate that they were in tears about it. But at the end of the day, it does make sense, the decision we need to make. And it was tough, but I looking back, I keep replaying that in my head going, man, did I miss a cue? Did I miss something in there? And sometimes you can easily go, yep, I missed a cue. And sometimes you go back and you go, man, this one, it is that person's internal struggles, but we still need to be cognizant of it and circle back. And so one of the 7 habits that struck out with me that I'm trying actively to be better about is about empathetic communication. And it's the idea of listening. And so the quote in here is about empathetic listening: seek first to understand involves a very deep shift in paradigm. We typically seek first to be understood. Most people do not listen with the intent to understand, they listen with the intent to reply. And that's always struck out to me. Something that I really, in the restaurant world, you spend a lot of time, and I talked about it the last go round, that when somebody says, "Hey, this isn't good," well, that doesn't help me. What isn't good? And so you learn, and that's all I've done since I was 15 and a half of just food service and serving people. And so when somebody says, "I don't like this," well, why? What about that don't you like? And so then you start learning to, while they don't like it, from across the room, and seeing their body language and how they're discussing and hearing the conversation they're having with whoever they're sitting at the table with. And you learn over time how to read the cues of something's great or something's not right. And so that's, to me, where I feel like I'm good at it. I still miss the mark damn near every fucking day. But it's something that I do try very hard at, is to hear what the person's telling me. And sometimes what they're saying isn't what they're wanting to say. It's just that deep down they're saying I'm struggling, but their words are, I don't like this, or any of those, some other category. And so I like the idea of listening to understand versus listening to reply. There was another quote in there, and it was the example in the book is going and talking about a person going and getting eyeglasses, and the doctor just gives them a pair and says, "Well, these work for me. Why won't they work for you?" And that was, well, you just need to have a positive attitude. My glasses work for me, so my glasses should work for you, and you need to have a better attitude about it. And that hit. That was, yes, though I see that situation from earlier today as this, I didn't see it from their lens or their story on what developed their thought process behind that situation. And so that's something that I think that our first responders do a very good job at. And I think that that's something that we need to be better at overall, is listening to what the person's saying in its entirety before you make a decision, before you reply. And that's a tough one. Lately I've really, I've been pushing pretty hard to get the foundation going, and Jared's warned me a couple times, "Hey man, no one's going to care about this to the level you do." And he's right. I mean, it is something that I've put an immense amount of time, that at night when we said we were going to do something, I'm here. And I purposely did not reach out to any of the board, because I've already asked a lot out of them, and I know that I've asked a lot out of them. And so I need to step back and say, you know what, we need to do this, but today they need me to do this myself, versus put one more thing on their plate. So I think that's been an interesting, to read the book and to understand that made sense to me, of empathetic listening, of taking that second to hear and understand what they are telling me versus waiting just for my reply. And even in my day job, I deal with that all the time, of folks that they just circle that drain, and they just talk and talk and talk and talk, and they don't get to a resolution. And that's a tactic that they just talk into submission. And it makes sense, because people are so focused on reply that once they just keep circling that drain, they just give up, because they're not allowed to say that reply. Flip side, though, is a struggle on mine, because I spend so much time trying to understand that if somebody's not willing to come back and say, "Hey, we had a disconnect, and here's where the disconnect was," that understanding part, I shut down. If we can't circle back to that understanding, to where I can learn how to be better for the next go round, if we're not going to have that, if you're not going to give me the opportunity to be better, or for us to have a better communication strategy with each other, then it's not worth progressing. And that's probably a bad approach. I think the other side of this is that there's times where, to Jared's point, that John, you're going to be the most passionate about it. And so people are looking and going, "I don't have an opinion. Tell me what to do." And that's a hard one. That's a really hard one to say, "I want to hear your thoughts, but we're still going to go this way. But I want you to tell me if I'm wrong." And I don't know. It's a fine fine line. And nowadays, especially due to COVID and everyone being so used to being virtual, it's hard. It's hard to get people to use words like "I don't like this" or "this doesn't feel comfortable," or to feel comfortable, I need XYZ. We just immediately go to the keyboard warrior, or I had somebody the other day send a message about my day job, and well, you didn't reply on this Facebook page. And it's like, well, my cell phone's everywhere. How would I have seen that Facebook page? That Facebook page I don't manage, I don't run it, I have nothing to do with that Facebook page, but I put it on Facebook. You should have seen it. It's like, well, but my cell phone is everywhere. So it's an interesting one that we've lost that ability of empathy for each other and to understand where everyone's coming from. And I think that's something that's important to me from the foundation side, is for everyone to be comfortable saying, I just can't, or I dropped the ball, I'll work on it, or I'll have it done by this date, or hey, I'm struggling today. And going into that mental health side of it, the empathy of listening, as leaders, I mean, if you're listening to this, hopefully you've got some interest, is we need to be better about reading the total situation. When you look at a first responder, they're having to look at everything. They're having, if somebody is looking drunk, but you don't smell alcohol, an EMS person's going to start going through the checklist. Is this blood sugar? Is this a stroke? Is this all these other things? And so that's just part of the nature of what they do. But we don't do that on the mental health side. We don't do that for each other. Even in conflict, we don't have that step back. And so that's something that I'm trying to be better on myself, of really, reading the room and saying, okay, I've said something wrong. I want to circle back. Maybe, there's a part of me that I want to know right now what I did wrong. And that's also a terrible approach. But it's just the ability to have that empathetic listening, and just to listen. I mean, shut the fuck up, stop with your initiative, and just listen. If an expert is telling you this is what we need to do, or this is why that's going to be a challenge, sometimes people in higher positions, they're just not going to be willing to listen. And so then what I found myself doing is that then I just cut bait and run. If you're not going to listen, if you're not going to value what I bring to the table, then I'm not dealing with you. And so I think that's the other side of it, is that on the flip side of lacking the ability to listen, we also lack the ability to know when to say no. I went to lunch with a good friend the other day, and I was struggling with just all the stresses and trying to get this up and running, and get the new office up and running, and dealing with conflicts and just the day to day, that it hit me and I got overwhelmed. And it's hard to realize when you get overwhelmed until you screw up. And so I wish people would have been a little bit more empathetic on that side as well, of like, hey, I understand that you're getting blasted by all these different levels. Let me take a step back. Instead, it was just hammer, 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 hammer until I blew up. And then I had to go back and go, look, this is what happened to me. So I really liked that idea of staying focused on listening to understand versus listening to speak. I think that to be effective with the foundation and to better serve our first responders, that's a skill set that I need to continue working on as I'm growing our board and our volunteers and all that. I need to understand and do a better job about understanding where everyone's coming from, whether that person is overwhelmed, whether that person is, doing good and they can take more on their plate. And also just making it where everyone within my organization understands that we need to have the ability to say, I screwed up, or I know I told you I can, but I can't, and to circle back after a conflict. I think that's something that's important to me as we continue to grow. And I like that this is in the podcast and recorded, because it's important to me. And I've always said this from day one. I don't want to run an organization as such that I've dealt with in my career, that is a dictatorship. I'm the boss, so that just automatically makes me right. No, you're a jackass. And I don't want to be that. I want everyone to understand, hey, this isn't the right path, and here's why. And teach me from your experience. The world does not need, one more John Beckloff out there. I'm enough as it is. We need more of that diversity, and to let everybody bring their ideas and their thoughts to the table, but also to make sure that everyone understands here at Project Tribute, that's the expectation, that we're going to say what we're feeling, what we're meaning. The second you walk in the office door, it's our health is out there. Our, even Jared and I talked about maybe we do a mental health checklist when we start meetings and just say, okay, where's everyone at? But I think that that's as we continue to grow the foundation, is just understanding and taking that second and realizing where everyone is at, and being able to say, hey, I recognize that I've asked a lot out of the entire team this week. I mean, we've had basically 3 events. I mean, I had a meeting just this afternoon after I got off work, and it's a lot. It's hard driving, but this is something that's very important to me. It's so I have to recognize that if I need this podcast tonight done, I need to do it versus asking anybody else, because everyone else is tired. And a lot of my first responders that are actively helping with this, one of them just had a baby. I mean, cutest baby I've ever seen, by the way, if you're listening, Justin. But it's just, that's a lot to ask out of people. And then when you're asking them and they are so proud of what we're doing, they also feel bad if I ask and the answer is no. And so then it's let me try not to put them in a scenario where they have to tell me no. Let me just try to listen and read the room and understand and look at all the information here, and not force that I don't know, that sense of failure to my board members or to my volunteers if it's not needed. Sometimes you do have to, and sometimes you have to say, hey, I need your help. I did that the other day with Jared, as a matter of fact, and said, hey man, tonight I need your help. And he was there, but I also have to be careful that that's not the normal. I really needed help with his help on that particular incident. But I don't know. I really like that. I like that idea. And there's several concepts within the book. Sorry, I stepped away from the mic there. Overall, the book's got just some wonderful ones. It was hard to pick, but the listening to each other is what we struggle with. And so we've got to be better about that. There was definitely the be proactive and begin with an end in mind, and put first things first. All that stuff makes sense. One of the things that a boss years ago taught me was that, and it's kind of a story that he had that I'll let him tell someday, but the idea of focusing on what makes the most impact. Pick your orange juice. And it's basically it was a story where he was working at a hotel and they couldn't figure out their food cost price. I know I said that I would let him tell the story, but sorry, I'm doing it anyways. And so what they kept raising the overall price of the plate of the whole breakfast buffet. And then what happened is they outpriced themselves and people stopped buying the buffet. And so then ultimately they lost more revenue because they couldn't figure out why their food cost was going so high. So they took a step back and said, well, what's the most expensive thing that we serve? And it was orange juice. And so they brought the per plate price back down and then just started charging for orange juice. And immediately they started seeing a profit. They were basically got back to where they should have been. And it's because they were focused on the entirety versus the one thing that was negatively impacting them. And I think that that's something that when I had lunch with my friend the other day, I hadn't been putting that principle to my life. And so I was engaging in all these conflicts and nothing unprofessional. It was just, no, that's not right. That's detrimental to you, and fighting this fight for folks that were just listening to speak versus actually valuing the expertise or what the thought and the services that my team brings to the table. So it was one of those where I've had to step back. I've had to step back and say, look, I'll bring my expertise when you decide that you value it. And, until you value it, I'm going to take my expertise and put it with those that need it and want it and value it. And if you want to have, if you want to go do your direction, good luck, have fun at it. And unfortunately, it's not as great as it could have been, but I would beat myself up and get beaten up to do what's best, and ultimately they got their way and it didn't go as best as it could have gone. And then I, had the conflict and the stress and all that causes it, because they were so focused on their path and, listening to speak versus understand. And so now that I've picked my orange juice and said, you know what, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not wasting my time in that direction. I'm just going to keep on going over here where my expertise and my time is valued. And it's helped me. And I mean, I'm a month in, so don't get me wrong on that. I'm probably still going to dive into some conflicts I shouldn't, but it felt really nice to be able to say, you know what, that was not valuable spending of my time, and you're not valuing my time and how you're behaving. So I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to be at peace with that decision because it's ultimately better for me. And I'm going to be selfish. And whenever you decide that you're going to listen to understand me, then we'll do it. But until then, I'm just not interested, and I'm going to be over here, and I'm going to focus on the things that are important and that do actually make a difference and that do matter. And I think that that's something that's been important to me in my professional career, that as the foundation continues to grow, that's important, that the foundation always has that. We want to be able to always have our employees and our staff speak their truth. Today we have 0 employees. It's volunteers, and I want my volunteers to speak their truth. And we want to set that culture of all of our employees, demand respect of themselves from each other, and they're able to say, hey, I can't today, or I screwed up, or I did a great job, or I did a bad job. And so that's where, this is kind of one of those, we're going into our first year. We officially in March got our 501c3. And it's important, as we continue to grow, we have got to make sure that we're always following that concept of listening to understand. As we're going to donors, if a donor is, man, I want to help you, but I don't support this one thing. Okay, well, that's fine. Can you tell me why? Maybe it's just a misconception. Maybe it's that you got a bad speeding ticket and you deserved it, and you're just still mad about it. Okay, I understand that. Thank you for sharing, and I'm going to walk away, and I get it. But sometimes it's I just don't understand what you do, and I feel like it could be controversial. Okay, well, let me teach you what we do. And it's pretty top level of just first aid supplies or training or things that can save a life and make our first responders better, but also help our first responders feel appreciated. So I don't know. I think that that's the big thing. Is we launched the foundation, that was important to me, and as we continue to grow the foundation, it's still a principle of what we're trying to do. Is we're trying to be respectful of each other, understand where everyone is standing today, and not change their way of thinking, but try to learn why are you thinking that way? How can I meet you in the middle? How can we understand each other? And also, how can you understand me? I'm passionate about this, and I need you to understand that I'm passionate about this and value that I'm passionate about this. And if you don't, that's fine. Probably not the place. It's kind of the same thing that when trolls get on our Facebook page and say stuff, it's like, man, of all places, this is really where you want to spend your time. So I can get worked up about it, or I could just say, you know what, ban, delete, move on. And so again, it's going back to that I'm going to listen and see the whole thing and listen for understanding. If you're giving me all the signs that you're not going to listen and you're not going to have a discussion, and we're not going to just teach each other, then it's a waste of time, and it's just added stress that doesn't matter. So I don't know. I really like that. It's a decent book. There's lots of principles in there. It says over 15 million sold, so it's got to be worth something. But I think that's it. I think that's really for this week, kind of the top level. I would challenge you guys and ask yourself, when you talk, are you listening to say the next thing, or are you listening to be understood? It's an area that I need to work on. There's a directness to me. One of my board members or advisory members kind of said, "John, you're different." Yeah, I am. I get that. So I need to understand that and make sure that I'm asking people questions and asking them so I can learn about them. And in turn, that shows I value you. I value what you bring to the table. So if you're listening, you have a team under you. You might just check yourself, and are you listening to speak? Or are you listening to understand and to be understood? But I think that we overall, as leaders, and those that are supporting the first responders and first responders, if we spend more time listening with all the factors, not just your ears, your eyes, your posture, their posture, and even just the time, if somebody is eating lunch and they seem pretty occupied, they're eating lunch and watching the video, that's probably not the time to go have a conversation. They're trying to just take a break from the day. Hey, I see you're eating lunch. Give me a holler when you're done eating lunch. Those little moments of just trying to be better to each other and take care of each other. A phrase in my industry that's pretty big is, we eat the elephant one bite at a time. There's always way more than we can accomplish in a day on the list for that day that has to be done that day. And you have to understand that's everybody's feeling that right now. And then you've got the global stuff that's happening too, that it's just a tragedy. And that's bringing more more chaos into it of what's the economic situation going to happen and all those. So it's I don't know, it's been a fascinating journey, and we're about to celebrate our official first year. And what better than to start a nonprofit in the middle of a pandemic right before a global war? Sounds good to me. So, in speaking of, we definitely don't want to get political, and so one of the things you won't see from us is stuff whenever the elections come up or any of that. We pretty well try to stay out of that, and it's not because we don't have opinions, but the mission's way more important. And ultimately, if it can't save a life, we can't do it. So, down from if we make a political candidate post, that's not going to save a life. Matter of fact, it could be the opposite. Or if we take a side on anything, I mean, I'm happy to learn about first aid or the newest greatest tool in the tool bag that we can try to fundraise for, or how we can fundraise better. I want to spend my time on that stuff. Supporting each other, spend my time on that. Mental health resources for sure, and giving people the avenue and opportunity to speak. But as we get into elections and all that stuff, you're not going to see any of that from us, because it doesn't have the capability to save a life. I mean, you could probably twist it somehow too, but I don't know. That's not something I'm after. So I think that over our next kind of podcast, I would love to get some engagement and hear from you all. Um, that's Jared and I, we're just kind of winging it and thinking about what are things that we want to talk about. But I also would love to hear what are things you want to talk about. What would you like to hear? What would you like to see? Is there any question that you would like us to ask a first responder? And you can be as vague or specific as possible. One of the ones that I've asked the first responders that they struggle with, and I didn't kind of winging it right now, but it's what are you most proud of? And I would say yesterday, to me, that was an exciting event that we a year ago set on this venture. And I talked with several folks and said, hey, I want to do this. And I'm starting a 501c3. To do it, I have to have these things to meet the 501c3, the tax status. And a year later, we are still together. Even the folks that had to step off the board are still, I would call them close friends of mine. And I'm there to support them, and they know. I hope they know that. If you guys are listening, I hope you know that we'll do anything for you, within reason. Some of y'all are shady, but it's just I'm proud. I'm proud of the fact that from a concept a year ago to being invited to a local business to share what we're about, and to have that whole team there, that was a cool event. It was just a dream kind of coming to fruition. I wish I took more photos. If you were there and you took photos, thank you. But I'm excited. I'm excited to see what our next year brings to us. We've been incredibly fortunate. We had a donor that's donating the basically the rent for the office space, and that's been incredible and really helped us kind of move to that next level. And we've started having guests come to the office. We'll be doing our grand opening sometime in April, and that's when I'll start posting the address and all those things. But even down to the fact that we had enough supplies that we could go to a gun range and we could hand out extra safety supplies to all the people running the event. That was so exciting. So there's more to come. I definitely, if you haven't checked out the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, it's one worth checking out. But even just down to Googling the concept of empathetic listening, I think that's something that we all need to be better about, and we all need to really take that time to understand the audience, where they're at the moment that you're trying to talk with them, and is that the right moment you're trying to talk to them, and listening to them. You could hear the tone of voice. Are they panicked? Are they stressed? Do they look panicked or stressed? And this is something our first responders are very, very good at doing. They become experts at reading people. Same thing in my history. That's what I do is in the food service industry, is we read people and we understand, and we have pretty direct, open conversations if somebody's doing good or if they're not. And I think that that's something that it makes it where the interactions that I'm fortunate enough to have with our first responders, they're always very genuine interactions. And I think that it's an organization or group of people that I'm very comfortable with, because I know that it's a true, genuine, honest conversation. And if I'm screwing up, they're going to tell me. Same thing. If they're screwing up, I'm not shy to tell them. So I think that that's why I support our first responders to the level that I do, is because they have always they're always working to better themselves and better their communities, regardless of what you see in the media and regardless of a couple bad apples. So that's my challenge to you guys is take a little bit of time, assess how are you at empathetic listening, how are you doing, what can you do better. I'm open to suggestions, ideas, so I'll post this on our Facebook page and put some comments in there if you have questions. If you, hey John, I want to ask a firefighter this, or I want to ask SWAT team this. I don't know. Give me some stuff that you want to see or you want to hear. Or if you have a story you want to share, please reach out, share your story. I can keep it anonymous, or I can bring you on. We can do the podcast wise. How we can do this is virtually. Jared and I do that pretty often, where I send you a link, and sometimes he's on his phone, or some of our guests are on their phones. Sometimes they're on their computer. But you can be pretty well anywhere in the world as long as you have internet, and if you don't have internet, as long as you have cell service. But want to really share more people's stories, and you don't have to be a first responder. It may just be, man, I had a moment with the first responder that I want to tell you about. Great, let's share some stories. But again, I hope you all have a wonderful weekend and spend some time just listening to understand. That's the challenge this week. Hopefully we can help each other. Hopefully we can be better to each other just through listening. And if you find that you're talking with somebody that they're listening to speak, maybe call them out on it. Hey, are you actually listening, or are you just talking? Because there's a difference. And if you're constantly with somebody that all they're doing is talking, just stop. It's not worth your time. It's not. And it's not normal within our society just to be like, you know what? You don't value what I bring to the table. So I value what I bring to the table more than you do. So I'm going to walk away, and good luck. They may say, hey, I screwed up. Then they valued you. They may just ghost. Cool. Less stress. So thank you for listening. Again, we have all of our products at our website, projecttribute.com. Lots of shirts. We've got shirts and coffee mugs and hats and all sorts of stuff. And then soon we'll be opening up the office and kind of a store. And then if you think of anything you want us to ask or you want to see on the podcast, let us know. If you're watching the podcast, please make sure you're giving us a like and a share. And even if it's on YouTube or on Facebook, give us a comment. Let us know, hey, I hate your lighting, or I don't know, just engage with us. Let us know how we can be better. But really appreciate you guys. Have a great rest of your Friday evening. Thank you for enduring, I don't know, persevering through this podcast. And then we'll see if we can get some better content for you. So enjoy your rest of your night. Have a good one. Thanks, guys. This podcast is hosted by the Project Tribute Foundation. We are a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to aiding our first responders. Thank you for listening. For more information on our efforts, check us out at www.projecttribute.com. If you're a first responder that would like to share your story, contact us at projecttributefoundation@gmail.com. You can find us on various social media and podcast sites by searching the Project Tribute Foundation. 100% of donations are used to save lives, while our retail store pays for any of our operational costs. Thank you again, and please be sure to like us, follow us, and share our foundation with your friends. Thank you, and have a great day.